Hi there, Dr. Zwelling here, and I wanted to talk to you tonight about aspirin. Why do you want to take aspirin? Why would you not want to take aspirin? In order to understand aspirin, you first have to understand the platelet. Platelet is one of three elements in our blood. We have red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Platelets are not really a cell. They're an element. They're part of the cytoplasm. Long story short, they are necessary as the first clot, the first place to stop up a bleed. So when you cut yourself, the first little clot that forms is what we call a platelet clot. Sometimes we call that a white clot because the red blood cells and the other elements in the blood are not there. It's mostly just platelets. But they're the first stop in a deluge of bleeding. They're very necessary. However, they don't last forever. And when you flick off that little platelet clot, sometimes you start to bleed again. But of course, then platelets will again come to your rescue and you will then clot. Why is that important with heart attack and stroke? That's important because a heart attack and a stroke is all about a clot. So when something happens inside your blood vessel wall and there's some inflammation, the platelet comes to the rescue first thing. And the platelet is there to form a clot. It thinks it's doing a good thing, but not so much. Because obviously if you have a clot, the blood flow has stopped and a stroke or a heart attack will ensue. So aspirin is the first line regimen against a clot, either in the heart, in the brain, or anywhere else, quite frankly. So it would seem quite obvious that while it would prevent a heart attack or stroke, it could also potentially cause other bleeding, and that is true. You need to know that platelets last for about 8 days. That's important because we don't have to stop the function of all platelets to decrease the ability of our body to form a clot. You can just treat some of the platelets. That's important. So you don't have to take a full aspirin or a whole bunch of aspirin every day. You can just take a little bit of an aspirin, a baby aspirin. And you can take a baby aspirin every day, and it will affect 1/8 of the platelets, because as soon as that aspirin sees a platelet, that platelet is dysfunctional for the entire life of the platelet, which is 8 days. So some of the platelets that don't see that aspirin are alive and well. Some of them are not so much. But so you have a good balance of clotting and not clotting. So now getting back to aspirin. It's very important with respect to protecting you from the opportunity of clot and heart attack or stroke, and we do believe that it probably protects about 20% of the patients from having that final heart attack and stroke. So that you'd buy that lottery ticket, I'm sure. But of course the side effect is bleeding. So you have to weigh the goods and the bads. My personal opinion, I would take a little bleeding if I could protect myself from a heart attack or a stroke. That's my thought. And if you're going to tell me that there's a 20% chance that I could do that, oh my goodness, I'm going to take that baby aspirin every day. Now, aspirin has also been shown to decrease the risk of cancer. And just as an aside, if you want to decrease your risk of cancer, you're going to need 2 baby aspirins a day. But I would not advise you to take any more, because the more you take, the greater the risk of bleeding, right? Because you're going to affect that many more platelets. So you don't need to do that to protect yourself from heart attack and stroke. So 2 baby aspirins a day is all you need, once a day, pure and simple. If you have any bleeding internally, obviously a GI bleed, a gastritis, you might want to talk to your doctor about whether you should stop or not, or whether he wants to give you some protection against that happening. The problem with aspirin is that it affects the mucosa of the stomach, and it can break that down so that some of those acids can eat away and you can get an ulcer. Not a good thing. You can also have just a little irritation. That's not so bad, but you certainly don't need to get yourself into a bad situation. So always know what your possible downside is before you engage in taking an aspirin. Myself, I don't see the problem. Now, there is a distinction between someone who's already had a heart attack or stroke and someone who has not. That is called secondary prevention versus primary prevention. Now, that's where the real debate is. Do I really need an aspirin for primary prevention? My opinion is yes. Most of you don't even know if you have risk. Most of you don't know what that blood vessel looks like. Most of you have never asked your doctor, and your doctor has never so much as told you. So my personal opinion again, is I want to protect you and myself from a heart attack or a stroke. I think that we do not know who is really at risk and who is not at risk, and I would suggest that everyone take 2 baby aspirin a day, as long as it's okay with your doctor, if you don't have any other risk of bleeding. Clearly, if you have other risk of bleeding, you do need to talk to your doctor. So that's the aspirin story in a nutshell. I'm not sure what the debate was about over the FDA. The FDA sometimes gets gets confused, I think. I'm not sure that they always have your best interest at heart. In any event, if you have any other questions, you can ask anybody on this website, or you can talk to your doctor. An aspirin a day does keep the doctor away. It's even better than an apple. Take care now. Bye-bye.